Oh, I'm really enjoying myself here. Anyway, sorry, so we go back to what we were talking about. So the next phase is the service design phase. And it is going to be a bit of an IT discipline. Like I said, this is really more about how the IT teams will scope out what a service will look like. But it's important for procurement people to be involved in this phase because you can influence the way things are designed. And the first sort of sub-discipline, if you like, of service design is service level management. Now, service level management is quite a specialist skill. And really, you know, if you pare it down to its most basic forms, is how are you going to measure the service in a way that is delivering what you expect it to do? Now, you've done your strategy, you're in the middle of your design, so what outcomes do you need? And this is things like, you know, basic things like what are the service hours, that sort of stuff, but also, you know, if it's an IT service, do you need it available from 9 to 5 100% of the time? Or could it be switched off for 20% of the time? And if that's the case, you'd have an availability metric of 80%. So it's those sorts of things. You just ask the questions, how are you going to measure success? And that will help you define your service levels, which then go into your contract. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about service levels later on. The next phase is capacity management. Now, this links back to what we spoke about before, which is your demand management. So if you know that you're going to be in a position where, oh, hold on, we've got a policeman coming. This is not, I hope it's not for us. Am I too close? Hiya. Am I alright? Too close or? No problem, thanks mate. That's the sound of the police. Anyway, right, so I will carry on. So the next phase is capacity management. And that capacity management is really important. Links back to the demand management, but it's really trying to design a service that can cope with the demand that you thought about at the strategy level. So rather than having to buy new equipment all the time because you're trying to meet the demand, knowing what the demand's going to be and then managing that capacity appropriately is really important. So in a design phase, you really just need to think about how that works. The next phase, availability management. Now, availability in its simplest form is how available a service is, obviously. But that defines, you know, what levels of resilience do you need in a service. So the technology guys will be looking at how many servers they need, how many data centers they need, and what sort of networks they need. That's all the technical stuff. But if they don't get that right, you can't force the supplier to offer a permanently available service if you haven't got any resilient components. So from a procurement perspective, it's finding a balance between cost, i.e. how resilient is everything, and service. So that is a really important part of the procurement conversation to be having. The next phase, which I'm just making my notes, which is the most important one, information security management. Now, clearly security is very important these days, as demonstrated by our fantastic carrier behind us, but also, you know, the cyber threats that are coming around are enormous. So making sure you understand the level of security you're expecting your supplier to conform to, usually defined by regulatory frameworks like ISO 27001 or those sorts of things, making sure they've got the right controls in place for the service in the design makes it very easy for you to contract for it and make sure that the supplier understands that. And the final one that's a core process from the service design phase is supplier management. Now clearly, that is the domain of the procurement department. But actually, if you delve into it, it's not just about managing your supplier from a procurement perspective, but also understanding how any service provider is going to manage their own suppliers. So the design needs to encompass all of those things. It needs to encompass service levels, capacity management, availability management, security, and the suppliers. And if you've got that in your design, you know roughly how it's going to work. That's going to give you a sense of how things will change and how things will eventually operate the service.